Today we're digging into a bold idea, using escape rooms to build better leaders. Our guest, Brian Slattery, co-founded Teamwork Unlocked, a B2B company that designs escape room-style leadership programs with live, in-the-moment coaching for corporate teams. He pioneered the concept at Google Singapore, where he built a permanent 60-minute escape room used by 150 or more teams, and even launched what became the largest office board game cafe with 400 more titles and about 1,000 people visiting. We're going to unpack how pressure, puzzles, and play can transform team culture, unlock sales opportunities for immersive businesses, and level up coaching on the job. If you run or design escape rooms, manage teams, or you're just a player who loves this world, stick around. You'll leave with concrete tactics to fill weekday slots, win more B2B deals, and build a culture where people actually speak up and step up. Brian, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Brendan. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I already, right off the bat, I love that I'm seeing board games right behind you. That makes me so happy. I've got a whole closet of them right over here. So when I saw that as part of your profile, I was really excited.
Yeah, so when I was working at Google Singapore, I built that board game cafe that you mentioned in the intro. And one of the first things I had to do when opening this company was kind of replicate that. It's not nearly the same size as what we had at Google, but we still got close to 100 games here. And we use this for workshops with companies if they want to do that as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you remember like the exact moment when you realized that an escape room could be more than just fun? Like that it could reveal how like a team can truly work the best together?
Yeah, it was probably like the third session I ran when I was at Google. So I built the escape room at Google last year with another friend of mine. We started building it. I think we got the sign off to build in December 2023. Actually started the groundwork of buying all the parts, assembling everything, designing all the puzzles in February. We were playtesting by June last year, and then we officially opened within the Google Singapore office in July. Even during the playtesting, I really quickly noticed, and kind of inherently knew, but it meant more, is that a lot of the skills that you use in an escape room are the exact same skills that you need to use at work. So, we see escape rooms all over the world that do cater to corporate clients. They bring in customers and talk about things like teamwork and communication and collaboration and all those good things. But what I always felt was when you're in an escape room with colleagues, which I've done several times before, when it's done, you kind of get thrown out because the next team is coming in. So everyone goes off and goes to a bar or goes and does karaoke or maybe just goes home for the night. And you leave a lot of really good learnings on the table. So I wanted to bring that out. And since we were in the office, I thought, well, what better place to start doing that than here? So I tacked on about a 30-minute debrief where we kind of went through some of those things with my colleagues at Google. And we're talking about what observations they had, things like that. And the more I did that, the better the feedback got. And I started hearing from colleagues that, you know what, like that was the best escape room I've done in Singapore, because the quality of them here is not the best. Ours was pretty good though. But they said, what was really good was doing that last learnings bit. And so then at the end of last year, I decided to resign from Google. And when I did, it was actually the president of Google Asia Pacific who had done my room with the president of Google in every country in Asia. They'd all done the room together. And he said, you know what? I don't know what you're doing next, but I think you should take that escape room idea and run with it. And so that's what I did.
That's pretty amazing. Having so many people run through that escape room, did you find that there were common patterns that people found? Like, I guess like today, your escape room is really about teamwork and things like that. Is that something that you found in the day-to-day escape room that you ran at Google?
You'd see a lot of things because I think one big difference when you go to like a consumer, a B2C typical escape room, is you're normally getting a lot more people who've done one before, who enjoy that type of thing. You have some, nearly professional escape room players who just kind of crack everything. With our groups, we had a much, much higher percentage of players who'd never done an escape room before. And so it was really interesting to see, and you could clearly see who had done escape room type puzzles before and who hadn't. And you would see different types of leadership step up. So you see some people who We refer to them as an analyst profile. They're the ones who, typical escape room, they'll be a searcher, right? They will go around the room, not really solve any puzzles, but they'll be the one who discovers the book on the shelf with the hollowed out insides and the clues inside. They'll notice a slightly different pattern on the wall. All of those things they'll point out. And then you have like your problem solvers who will just jump in and start trying to solve any problem they can, regardless of not of if it's ready to be solved. You have natural communicators who are the ones who shout, "Hey, I found a key," or "Oh, I need a 4-digit clue over here." And then you have your motivators who don't really do much except cheer everybody else on. And finally, it's not the last of the profiles we talk about in the room, but one that we saw the most rarely was a proper organizer. Someone who kind of, leads the room, divides labor essentially, and assigns people in the room to different tasks, but doesn't necessarily jump in themselves. And, I think veteran escape room players will know it's good to have that central person in the room who kind of just coordinates everything that's going on, but stays big picture and doesn't get lost in the weeds. And we definitely noticed that players who had those type of profiles on the team and a good blend of profiles would escape much faster than those who were kind of just scattered around or didn't really have a good strategy.
I think it's interesting. You talk about those in roles in comparison to how they're playing out in escape rooms, but it's clear that you have a good picture about how those are good leadership or teamwork coordinating type things. How long did it take you to really ascertain that when watching people?
I don't know exactly how long it all fell into place. I was kind of mentally taking notes and physically taking notes about different things I was seeing because I wanted to enhance those debriefing sessions that we were doing, right? Then when I decided to start my own company around this concept, I dove into it a bit more. And originally I came up with 8 things that teams do that really map well to other leadership profiles. But then as we were building out the room and thinking about some of the other puzzles we did, we realized that there was a 9th one, which we call the reflector. Those are more interesting in the business world, but they do exist in the escape room world as well, especially with new players. That's when you see the reflector role pop up. So what that one is it's someone who relies on past knowledge and past data to bring solutions to current problems. Okay? So often in work, there'll be someone who said, "Oh, yeah, we had this problem 3 years ago, and here's what we did. And it solved it. So let's try that." Or, "No, this didn't work a while back, so I don't think it'll work now." Okay? When those people are faced with new problems, they tend to freeze because they don't have any past experience to draw from. So when you put them in an escape room and it's their first time, they'll just stand there. They won't know to look around at the room. They won't know to solve puzzles. They just won't know what to do. And until they start, seeing what others are doing and picking up clues, that's when they'll start to get more into it. Also, you'll see people who, "Oh, I've done a puzzle like this before. Let's try this." We had someone just last Friday who was in our room, which is a submarine themed room. And without giving any spoilers in case any future customers watch this, there was something specific that they needed to do with a magnet. And the person remembered that his father was an engineer who carried around a magnet with him at all times for a purpose. And sure enough, that's what he needed to do with the magnet in our room. So it was interesting because he shared that past moment with the rest of his team, and it was able to help them solve that particular puzzle much faster than other teams do.
It's so fascinating thinking about it in the context of work like that, because I see that all the time in those kinds of roles that you're talking about. And the debrief is something that I think I don't see a lot either. Obviously, when you escape an escape room, you kind of walk out and everybody kind of cheers, you grab a sign, take a picture, you're off to doing whatever, just like you said. So I can see having those key takeaways and reflecting as a group together on what things worked and what things didn't really would bring people together and just become better communicators together as a team. That's really awesome.
I was just going to say that the really different thing about ours is it's not just like one debrief. So our workshop is actually 4 hours long.
Okay.
Right. And they spend an hour and we actually let them run through the room twice. One time is the standard setup. And then we have an alternate setup that changes about 40% of what they do inside the room. It's kind of to leave on a high. But throughout the workshop, we actually stop them in the escape room at various points. And then we bring them out and we debrief right there in the moment and talk about what we're seeing, what they're experiencing, what's happening. We give them a chance to kind of reflect and strategize. And then they get to go back into the room and apply what they've learned from that first session. So you'll see their behaviors change over time in a room, which is really cool, because I'm sure when you've done escape rooms, you're like, oh, we should have done this differently, or oh, we forgot to
Yes.
do that. And in the moment, we kind of got caught up in things. And that's what happens in work too, right? You're working on a project, you don't realize that there's a problem happening. And so we teach that it's really important to take those moments just to pause and think about what you're doing before, possibly changing your strategy or changing your tactics. So that's where a lot of the really cool learnings come out, because you'll see individuals who in the first phase of the room, they're acting a certain way. And then after just, a 20-minute, 30-minute discussion, they go into the second phase and completely have changed their behaviors and are, suddenly stepping up as a leader, or now they're communicating everything they find very loudly because they were, keeping a key to themselves for 20 minutes in the first room. Interesting things like that.
I think it's really interesting because when I read that you have like the at the moment sort of stops and training moments, like my heart started having palpitations. I was like thinking of my boss standing over my shoulder being like, no, you got to change that thing. But the way you describe it as like a reflection moment and being able to almost like rewind and do that thing over, actually, I feel like it reduces the pressure. Whereas I was feeling it would increase the pressure of having someone analyze my actions. I think that's really neat. I think another thing that's related to this is I read somewhere that you had kind of said that people learn best when the stakes feel real. And I'm curious how you bring that into the experience of making it feel real, even though it's you're not sitting at your desk doing work, you're in a different environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that just comes with the classic immersion of escape rooms, right? And we did spend a considerable amount of thought and time and frankly budget to make our escape room as immersive as possible. So there's a lot of escape rooms out there that are much better than ours, that are using NPCs and have really spent tons and tons of money on making the room as good as possible. But for ours, it's a submarine. We've decorated it with a lot of different pipes. We have metal grating on the ceiling. The walls are actually curved, so you kind of feel like you're in a tube. And we do a lot of things, just like turning off the lights in the beginning, because the power is gone in the sub. So you have one emergency light, and the first thing you have to do is get the power back on. It's a rather high-tech room, so there's a lot of voiceover of effects that happen when certain puzzles go. And for people who are not accustomed to escape rooms, it's highly immersive. Of course, there's no way that they're going to actually drown and get stuck in the submarine, which is good. But it's interesting because it almost is immersive, and yet at the same time, it's a safety net for them to try and experiment different things and play into different roles that they might not normally do. When I've explained this to some of our customers, right, I like to think about an escape room as almost like a simulation of a 3-month to 6-month business project. You know your starting point. You're in a submarine that's sinking. You know your end point. We need to get out of here. But you have no idea what's going to happen in between those 2 points. And so you think about any kind of project implementation at work, your end goal is to, install this software or increase your customer base by X or, whatever it might be. And you know where you are today. You might have an overall game plan about how you want to get there, but you're going to experience a bunch of different bumps and twists along the way that are really going to make, is that end goal even possible? Can we do it on target? Can we do it within budget? Can we do it in keeping everyone happy? So we take that 3 to 6 month program and shrink it down to basically a 60-minute workshop. And this is a really good experience for customers that are about to kick off a new project or about to work with a new cross-functional team, for example, because they get the chance to experience that in an afternoon and then work out the bugs before they go and try this in a real project.
Yeah, that's really neat. The live coaching that happens when they're in the program, is that something that you hope that will carry over to when they get back to their, real job of like we're approaching work in just a slightly different way now. We're being a little more thoughtful up front, maybe communicating a little bit more than we were before. Is that the intended goal?
Absolutely. There's a couple things here that are important to know about learning and development. Number one, you forget 50% of everything you learn in a workshop the same day that you learned it. And you forget up to 90% of it as little as 1 week later. Okay. Also, there's something about retention rates in how you learn. So if you're sitting in a lecture, typical classroom, you will retain about 10% of the information. If you are in a more immersive experience, like hands-on where you're doing something, you'll retain up to 75% of that information. So that's important to us because a lot of HR teams and things like that will question, hey, we did a corporate training and then nothing stuck. So what we've done is we actually have built a lot of software that we're using alongside of our workshop, behind the scenes, and then afterwards. So during the workshop, we have a note-taking app that my co-founder created that all throughout the workshop, whenever anything interesting happens, if someone's turning a crank and the rest of the team is cheering them on, we'll click a button that says motivator. We'll type in a color of the bandana that we have them wear so we can identify what player is who. And then we'll say like a red player cheered on blue player when turning the crank. And it will timestamp that in a video that we're taking of the CCTV. And in the workshop, we can go and show exactly that moment. And, we'll know by that point, hey, red was Brandon. So, hey, Brandon, 7 minutes into the room, we caught you having a motivator moment. Let's show everybody else what that looked like. And then we'll talk to the blue player, who's maybe Jane. Jane, how did you feel when you were turning that crank and Brandon was cheering you on? Right? And then she can discuss that a little bit. At the end of the workshop, we will have like a 30-page PDF document that shares, all of the profiles exhibited by the team members, which ones they want to lean into, where there's gaps on the team, what my co-founder Tom and I observed, and all of those notes. And we share that with them. And then for a 3-month to 6-month follow-up, they can actually select one of those profiles that they want to practice at work. So again, let's take motivator as an example, right? They'll say, I want to work on my motivational skills for the next 3 months. Great. Every Monday, they'll get an email that will give them a weekly challenge. It might be something as simple as send an email to a colleague to thank them for something that would have gone unnoticed and underappreciated. So they do that, right? They've just given a little boost to someone else on their team. It's not much, but it means something, especially to the person who wouldn't have received that thank you otherwise. Then on Friday, they get a little chance to reflect, make sure they've done the text. They get another email prompting them to do that. And then the following week, we start that cycle over again. So even just that little, one prompt a week to remind them about the training, remind them about their role, and help them take a conscious action to do something about it, that's what's going to help the learning stick. And when you realize that across a whole team, everyone is selecting different profiles, you're going to get little injections of the benefits of those profiles from everyone across the team throughout the rest of the quarter.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was going to ask you what the follow-up plan is. Obviously, when you're doing an escape room, you go out to dinner and you probably chat for 5 minutes and then you forget about it, a week later, like you said. So having those follow-up steps are great to keep people engaged and motivated. Do you ever get any feedback or pushback from people who feel like it's maybe like homework or, it's just not part of what their day-to-day job is and they're struggling to kind of fit that in? Or are they small enough chunks that really it doesn't take much to implement those things?
We haven't had any negative feedback yet. We send them a survey beforehand to come prepared, which helps them identify which of those profiles they like and which ones they dislike. Because one of the things is everybody is all of the profiles, right? You fill in all of these gaps at some point, but some of them are going to be stronger than others or more preferred than others. So we want everyone to be aware of that. Knock on wood, we haven't had anyone show up yet without filling out the survey. So they're taking that part seriously. As far as the follow-ups go, so far so good. There are some people who have unsubscribed from the email. That's natural, but we'll be able to report that back as well because, hey, the companies are investing in this. They want to see people do the follow-up training. So maybe they'll resubscribe at some point in the future. But, I've had direct messages to me come through on LinkedIn and such from people who've done the workshop who've been thanking me and saying, hey, I leaned into the challenger profile because that's really not me. And it's really helped me unlock my inner challenger. Or other people who are saying, hey, I did this workshop a week ago or 2 weeks ago and things are really sticking this time. And that's rare. So the feedback so far couldn't be better. We're quite happy.
That's awesome. We've talked a little about coaching and the team dynamics, all that kind of stuff. What is your, like, really, can you break down, I guess, what the go-to coaching move would be if you're seeing something happen? What does that intervention really look like? Is it, hold on, we turn on the lights, in the sub and you go, hold on, we're going to do something. What does that look like?
We won't stop them directly when they're in the room. Right. So we have these break points that create a more natural flow. I think the worst is when, I really need to hop on the mic and really walk people through puzzles if they're really stuck. We do hints and things, but we don't want it to be a frustrating experience. So that can be a little bit. One puzzle in particular is getting teams stuck more than we'd like. So we've increased the clues within the room on how to get it done. So we don't have a direct intervention like that per se, but we are able to talk about things afterwards, right? And so it's very easy for us to discuss what happened in the room, better understand what the players were thinking in the moment. It also helps us with, future iterations of the program. Explain and point out where the gaps might have been. Because in most cases, when someone is stuck in a puzzle or a team is stuck in a puzzle, it's because one of the profiles was not showing up as strongly as it should have. We've designed the puzzles in mind, keeping in mind the profiles to extract them. And every puzzle in the room will typically require people leaning into 2 or 3 of the profiles at any given time. At some point, you really need to have like a super strong organizer or a super strong communicator, or else they will not solve the puzzle. And we've seen it happen, right? And so even in those cases, if they're deep enough into the workshop, we can hop on the mic and say, hey, who's the organizer in this moment? And ask them to step up that way. Interventions help. The more interesting thing, though, for a lot of teams is how when we're doing the debriefings and we're doing, the midpoint debriefings or the final one, we can relate that back to business. And we can talk about, have you had a moment where you had a communication breakdown like this? Have you had a moment where a leader stepped in and got too hands-on a puzzle or, on a problem at work? Because hopefully they're not just doing puzzles, but leaned in too much into a problem at work. And because they were so focused there, they lost attention somewhere else that needed their help. And that part started to break. When we tie that in and really talk with companies about where they're missing certain steps, that's where the training comes to life. So one great example that is quite common here in Singapore, to be honest, I think just culturally, is I mentioned the challenger profile before, right? That's a devil's advocate type. Okay, so if you think about an escape room context, it's when everyone is stuck in groupthink and they're trying to solve a puzzle one way, and this person steps in and says, guys, I think we're on the wrong track here. We'd be doing something else. And then that moment will just kind of stop the momentum and get people thinking in a different way to solve a puzzle, right? They don't necessarily offer up a new solution themselves, but they stop the team from heading in the wrong direction. Okay. That's super common in business, right? Someone raises their hand and says, hey, wait a moment, folks. I think we need to think about this differently. Or have we considered the risks of doing ABC? This might cause a problem down the road if we don't do something. In Singapore and with some cultures in Asia, I've been living here for over 20 years, it can be difficult for people to stand up and point out, go against the group norm and say, maybe we need to do something differently. I think, in the US, where I'm originally from, that's not a problem at all. People will jump up with their own opinions and shout what they're thinking without being asked. But it takes a little bit more prompting and a little bit more coaching, almost a bit more permission in Asia to do that. So when we've had a couple teams who've been stuck in those type of moments, we've guided them to assign someone in future meetings to be the devil's advocate, to sit there, and it's their task for that meeting to question what's happening, to make sure that the team isn't getting stuck, that they're looking at problems from multiple angles. And just by giving them that grace and that permission and that responsibility to question things can bring out that trait that is needed that otherwise might be seen as too disruptive or breaking harmony within the group or just being a troublemaker. But when they're assigned to do it, it lets them do it, and that makes the team as a group stronger.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Can you distill maybe like a couple, 2 to 3 lightweight kind of rituals or activities that people can do over and over in a small business setting that can help them to build like a positive, you know, cohesive working environment with each other?
Sure. I mean, I've been working in corporate life for too long at this point. This is my first time going out and doing something, in the entrepreneurial space. But I was a manager of a couple hundred people when I was working at Google and other teams, other companies. I was managing, Asia across the region. There's a few things that I would suggest for just about anyone to do. One, it's learn to trust your team fast and early. Uh, there's two philosophies on this. One is trust has to be earned, and one is trust is free. I'm a trust is free type of person because especially when you have new people joining your team, you want to get them to feel comfortable and ramped up and executing as fast as possible. And the best way to do that is to sit them down in opening meetings and let them know that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to ask questions. We were all sitting in your shoes as a day one employee at some point, and we wish people were around to help us. So that's a ritual that I would do every time we onboard any new member of my team, to the point that I didn't even have to give the speech. I would actually turn to the second newest member on the team who had heard the speech twice by that point and encourage them to give the speech to the new member. And then you kind of see some smiles and nods around the group because everyone had been there several times. And so it made a very welcoming and inclusive environment to help build a stronger team. That's one. Number two is, I think, show appreciation for the team on a regular basis, especially if you're managing a team. They can't say how important it is to just really say thank yous for the small things. It's very easy to get wrapped up in the day-to-day work, especially if things aren't going well or you're missing a target or projects are falling behind schedule. Those are the times when the teams can get demotivated, and it's extra important in those moments just to keep them going. Because one thing that's for sure, if you have a motivator on your team, someone who's, bringing positivity at all times, keeping everybody going, keeping things upbeat, and believing that we can accomplish something together as a team, if their mood sours and if they start to feel like something can't get done, that negativity and that despair almost can spread throughout the whole team very quickly and make everyone believe that something can't get done. Because if the most positive person has lost faith, there's no hope for everybody else. So those are both super important things to do. And like I said before, keep questioning what we're doing, making sure that people are double checking what's being done, that we're looking at problems from multiple angles and trying to come up with the best solution.
I really like the idea of having someone who is just hired give the speech. I feel like it's such a great way to give them some ownership, but also really to embody those core values of your team, and really, really just take that as part of their own and share that with someone else. That's a really great idea.
Yeah, and I hope that it led to, people continuing to do that speech, even though I've left the company now, right? And I know that, some past employees that I've coached who've become managers in their own right, and now they're leading teams, they've given me feedback that they run that exact same ritual with their teams now, because they felt when they run my team how well it worked and how comfortable and safe it made people feel and how it really opened up trust within the team. So I'm glad to see that one spreading. Maybe through this interview, someone else will pick that up somewhere in the world, and take it upon themselves as well. That'd be great.
No, I love that. You talked about one of the puzzles that you have in your room right now that is causing some people to stumble or some teams to work through.
Yeah.
Would you say that there's a time in this process that you've been either back through Google building your escape room or in this new one where maybe your puzzle design just kind of backfired and it wasn't obvious to the people in the room, and that actually had some positive learning benefits either for that team working through that challenge of a broken puzzle, or for you internally for your team to learn from and build on from?
So far in this room, we haven't replaced any puzzles. What we've done is we've put in like an additional hint, right? So since it's a submarine, and we have a couple stages and we have like a captain's room, we snuck in a notebook in there that has like a captain's log with some additional hints on how to operate something that happens in the room, right? So that has helped quite a bit. I remember in the Google room, definitely had one puzzle that we completely had to replace just because it wasn't working at all. And that room it was based on both Google culture as well as Singapore culture. And I picked up a traditional puzzle box, like the ones that you have to slide some knobs and things to open it up. And we had the next component of the escape room was hidden inside that box. And very quickly, we saw that teams wouldn't even realize that that was a box that needed to be opened. We started, painting symbols on it, like arrows and things to give hints that, hey, interact with this, right? But because it was, just like a box that kind of fit in with the decor of it too much, people wouldn't do it. Or when they would, you'd have some people who were just holding the box and working on it for 10, 11 minutes and couldn't quite get it open. So eventually we just trashed that puzzle completely and we replaced it with a puzzle, again, thematically, like using chopsticks and using a chopstick box. And there was a way that you'd get codes from that. And then the chopstick box would open and that was where you got your next piece of your puzzle. So sometimes, things just don't work and you have to replace them for one reason or another. Other times, there's one more puzzle in the room here that I think would not give escape room veterans much of a problem. There's a little bit of observation that you need to do and kind of figure out, okay, I think I can extract a number from this. But we've seen people who just don't even notice that for the longest time. So instead, we again planted another clue. We created a blueprint that looks like something else in the room. And the blueprint is rather easy to find. So then when people find that blueprint, they can realize, oh, I can get some numbers from this. It still takes them some time to solve the puzzle even after that. But at least we were able to skip several minutes of discovery by giving them a little bit more of an obvious clue. Because the last thing you want in an escape room is for people to really feel stuck and frustrated, especially ours, because, the challenge for our room is not to escape in 60 minutes, right? The challenge for us is to learn more insights about yourself and about your team and take those back and apply them to work. So the escape room is kind of a tool to help us deliver that learning. And so, we need to decrease the difficulty level a little bit, still keeping it there because you want those breakthrough moments, but we're certainly not trying to stump anybody.
So you talked about veteran escape room players and new players a couple times. And I'm curious if we can transition to sort of like sales for a minute. So you are different than a lot of escape rooms. You're a B2B only. You only deal with either corporate or other business entities. You're not reaching out to consumers and trying to get new people. With people who are, avid escape room players, you don't have to sell them. They're just looking for you, right? Like those are not the people you have to sell to. It's the people that don't know about escape rooms. So how do you use both your experience at Google as well as running this business to approach pitching corporate buyers or enterprise clients to come in and have a team building exercise? Do you shift on what you're selling?
Yeah, we have to. Thankfully, I've been in corporate sales for most of my career. My role at Google was basically to run the sales funnel from brand new customers until they're interested and they want to have a serious conversation. So, when you're talking to corporate buyers, you definitely need to, first of all, figure out who's the decision maker. In most cases, it's going to be a leader or manager of a team. Sometimes it will be HR. Oftentimes, though, HR will be more like an influencer. So we definitely want to be high on their radar. So when a leader comes to HR and says, hey, we need a cool activity, we're having an offsite or we're having a team meeting, we want to do something different, we want to be, top of mind with those HR teams so that they can say, hey, we've got something that's really cool and really different. Nobody in corporate enjoys when they hear they're going to have a training day, right? Everybody in corporate enjoys when they hear we're going to have a team bonding, team building, team fun day. Not everybody, but more people, right?
Sure.
So what we do is we're threading the needle between those two. right? So we are a team bonding, team building. You're going to have a lot of fun. It's an escape room, but you're going to get a lot of learning. So when we tie those two together, that helps resonate with managers who, yeah, they don't mind taking their team out for drinks and something like that, but they'd like to get something out of it. And you get the people who are in the team, some of them are interested in just having fun as a team. Some of them hate doing team building activities, but they can come into it thinking about it as training. And so you kind of scratch more itches that way and get a lot of more people excited. Beyond that, we do definitely target this room for certain types of teams, ones that don't really know their identities, ones that maybe have a new manager or a newly formed team, as well as even like cross-functional teams where you have people that don't work together day to day, but do work together often enough that they need to know more about each other than they would if they were on the same team. So it's a really good workshop for that. We have two more in design. One of them is going to be about purely communication skills. So we'll do the classic escape room trope of like dividing the team where half of them has some clues that the other one needs. We'll be playing with some things like that. We'll be doing a lot more like translation and decoding, those type of skills. And then of course we'll tie it all back into business. And then the third one we're going to do is about trust and psychological safety, where we're almost going to plant a trader in the room, potentially a trader, who might be not trying to solve the puzzles, but actually trying to slow the team down and get them to fail the mission, right? And so that will be interesting because you do tend to have some people at work that for whatever reason, want to score political points, or they're playing politics, doing something, and they have a different agenda than everybody else. We're going to hopefully teach teams how to work through those kinds of situations in that one.
I think that's great because I think that also could apply to clients who change scope at some point, right? Dealing with adversity and that same mechanism could be dealt with in that same way. You talked about HR being an influencer in a lot of these decisions.
Yeah.
And I imagine, obviously an escape room is fun. So they're probably thinking like, that's cool. It sounds fun, but like, how do I pitch this to my leadership team? Do you have like a 2-sentence kind of a elevator pitch that you give them that they can quickly package up and send back up the channels?
Yeah, we have a couple different, things that we can send them, like PDFs that we've made that explain what the learnings are going to be, things like that. We have a lot of strong referrals from other teams already that we can send them links to. One of the things that's the easiest, though, to be honest, we're not the same business model as your typical escape room where uptime is everything and we need to be churning people through as fast as we can, right? I'm calling you from the workshop right now. We don't have a booking today. And that's okay. We're fine, right? So what we'll often do, and I have, I think, 2 or 3 of these later today, is we'll have people come in for a meeting. We'll sit them down in our workshop. We'll show them a little bit about the 9 profiles, and then we'll actually put them in the room and have them solve the first puzzle, just the first one, and then we'll bring them back out, right? So then they get to experience what it's like, because this is new concepts to do this for B2B, right? I haven't found any other companies in the world that are exclusive B2B escape rooms. I think we're the first. So that means that the sell is a little bit harder because the penny doesn't drop right away. They know what an escape room is, but they don't see why that's a training. They don't understand our pricing. But then when they come to it thinking of it as a workshop, and then they walk into that room for the first time, and they realize this is like no other classroom we've ever experienced. Because any other corporate training is going to happen in a large meeting room. Maybe they'll bring in some Legos or some props or some toys or something, but you don't have an experience where you walk into your team into an escape room like this and expect to learn from it. So really doing that kind of demo has been super helpful. We have demo nights a couple times a month where we'll bring in a whole bunch of skeptical HR people at once, and we'll throw them together in the room and have them do a slightly longer version of the demo so that they can experience, hey, these are people I just met, and look how much I was able to learn and draw and take away from this. So imagine if I do it with a team, it's going to enhance things even more.
Yeah. How do you define success in a team once they've been through your program? I mean, is it because, they're feeling more successful? Is it because they're referring people to you to be as successful as they were? Like, what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a referral, word of mouth. That's the best thing that we can get. We do take a survey at the end of every group's session to see what they felt, how they liked it. So far, our average score is a 9.2 out of 10.
All right.
That's pretty amazing. And then what makes me the happiest is when someone totally unprompted takes the photos we take at the end of the session, posts something on LinkedIn with the rest of their team smiling and says, "Hey, we just had the best session. Here's all these awesome things I learned." And we're getting one or two of those for most sessions we're doing right now, especially since we've been polishing the workshop. We've only been open since July. Right. So it hasn't been a lot of time yet, but we've already had some really nice write-ups. We're starting to get some Google reviews and things like that. That's the best thing we can have, right? One team I remember sat in our room. They asked, can we do this again? And I said, well, it's an escape room, right? Yeah, you can come back again. You're going to solve it pretty quick the second time. But I told them about our plans for the next two that we have. And immediately their response was to break down within the team and divide and conquer about what other teams they're going to tell, what HR people in their company they're going to tell about this experience to drive more teams here so that we can become more profitable faster and start building the next room. So
Nice.
Their inspiration for spreading word is they want to do another workshop with us because they had such a good time. So that was about as good a feedback as you could hope for.
Yeah, and obviously you're coming up with some new ideas for upcoming escape rooms, but do you have is there a offering that you have that is more ongoing check-ins? You talked about a 6-month check-in or something like that with them. Is there more training that you're providing for corporations as more of a partnership, as a consultant type situation where you can continue engaging with them?
Yeah, not at the moment. We're doing the app. Of course, we're open to discussions on if someone wants to have a formal 1-hour meeting with us 2 months, 3 months after the workshop and kind of talk about what they've learned. Definitely we'll consider that. Right now where we are, we're more working on just getting a lot more word of mouth and a lot more customers through the room. I can certainly see where, we spin out and do a little bit more consulting on this than what we're doing now. We have designed the 3 escape rooms to be sequential. So the long-term goal, once those are all up and running, is that we bring teams in for the first one, for Submerged, and then we kind of, coach them on those skills for 6 months, and then we move them into the communications workshop, and then 6 months after that, we work on the trust and psych safety workshop. So the long-term plan, yes, it is to have a 1.5 year long relationship with a team or with multiple teams to kind of keep the learnings going, but we're still a startup, so we have to see what sticks, and we'll be ready to pivot if we have to.
I think the thing I love about that is you're not only building better, corporate teams, working relationships, things like that, but I feel like you're building this elite team of escape room people. You're literally training them how to be great at escape rooms as well.
Yeah.
And so it really it benefits the entire industry as a whole that you're teaching them how to do this and introducing them to something through such an immersive experience. I think that's awesome.
I mean, I would love that if we have people who had a great time at ours and decide to go out to a bunch of typical escape rooms and start cracking those. When I did all of the board game stuff, even now, one of my favorite things to happen was someone would sit down with me, I would teach them a game, and right in the middle of it, they go on their phone and order it from Amazon, or they're asking where they can get it, right?
Yep.
Spreading my hobbies and the things that I love to a wider audience, it only makes this hobby stronger and better, right? And whether that's board games or whether that's escape rooms, we all want more fans in the industry. We all want more customers in the industry. So if my company can be a small part of that and bring new people who otherwise would have never done an escape room into the fold, then that's amazing. The one thing that I think helps a lot with ours as well, it kind of goes against the industry trends, but we keep all of our escape rooms very corporate friendly, family friendly, if you will. I don't think you're going to have a lot of people coming in from the office who want to go in a zombie themed room or in a serial killer themed room and then go back to work, right? So we
Yeah.
do keep it a little bit more team based. There's still of course a touch of fantasy and a touch of immersion and things that we want to do with that, but I think that that's an important piece as well to keep in mind is we need to make this a welcoming entry point and something that I see, especially in Singapore. I have two daughters. I can't find an escape room here that is appropriately themed for them, right?
Mm,
That doesn't really exist. They did my Google escape room. That was fine. This one they're going to do soon. We're saving it for their birthday parties with their friends, but that doesn't exist here as much. You see a lot more like horror themes. And also something interesting about the market here that, some of your listeners might be interested in, especially for businesses running escape rooms. I think people know that a high escape rate is a good thing. You want teams, 80%, 90%, even 100% to escape your rooms. Ideally, you time the difficulty so they get out in the last couple of minutes to really, pump the adrenaline and the endorphins. But the worst thing that can happen is someone gets stuck 5 minutes into the escape room and they sit there the whole time and then they leave frustrated, right? And they'll never go back to an escape room again. They won't tell their friends they had a good time. In fact, they might actively tell people to avoid doing it because it's no fun. You're stuck in a room for an hour and you don't know what to do. Some of the rooms here in Singapore tend to boast like a high difficulty rating, like only 30% of our players escape in time. I think that's a big loss for everybody.
yeah. Yeah. And I love the approach you just talked about, because that's literally why I started this entire thing. Is I love escape rooms. I love board games, playing with my family and all that stuff. And the more people that know about it, the bigger the industry gets, and the more escape rooms around me that I get to play. It's amazing. So I love that you're, thinking about your business, but also thinking about how to spread the joy of all those entertainment options. All right. Well, today we learned why real pressure beats slide decks, how designing backward from behaviors makes rooms more than entertainment, and how to sell those outcomes, not just games. From Google's culture experiments to Teamwork Unlocks live coach leadership simulation, Brian really talked about how puzzles can create safer, stronger teams at work. So if you're an owner or designer, try a weekday leadership lab and try to add that to your cycle. If you're a GM, and add kind of like how the roles work into your mindset. And for players, just watch how you communicate. The awareness that you bring to that is a superpower for your next room and your next meeting. Brian, I just want to say thank you for joining us. For everybody watching, tell us your biggest takeaway in the comments. If you test one of these things, definitely tag us, tag Brian, so that we can share your results. And until next time, unlock leadership and escape limits. Brian, tell us where we can find you and where people can connect to you.
So we're only available in Singapore right now. So if you have any Singapore listeners, we're welcome to have you. We hope to expand across Asia and maybe beyond, but that's still a few years out. You can find us at teamworkunlocked.com. That's all one word, teamworkunlocked.com. And if you find me, I'm Brian Slattery. You can tag me on LinkedIn, and I post a lot there about what we're doing with the business and just my thoughts on leadership and coaching in general. Thank you so much for the time, Brennan. Really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun today.